All right, old school Texas Tech. I'm in South America this morning. I think in a country of 18 million people, I'm one of the very few that's probably even up this early. In Latin America, people do not get up early in the morning. And I can say with almost 100% confidence that I am the only person right now in Ecuador that is awake before 6 a.m. with a Texas Tech hat on and a Texas Tech banner behind me. So we'll start it off like that. The other admin for the group, Old School Texas Tech, which has really been a really fun surprise for both of us as we've both made a lot of friends on there. I've been a little more active, but Jordan is going to start being a little more active in the future. How long have we known each other?
Man, first off, it's good to see you, and I do think you nailed it. I would bet $1 million. Not that I have $1 million to give away, but that you are the only person in Ecuador up at 6 a.m. with Texas Tech with a hat, a flag, all that in the background. I would comfortably take that bet.
Yeah.
Man, we have known each other since the summer of 1999. Think about
Yeah.
how far back that is. That's over 20 years, dude.
Some of these kids weren't even alive. Some of these players weren't even alive.
Right.
You know, yeah. So
20,
yeah,
24 years, my man. 24 years.
yep. So kind of tell me what you think. We got a football game finally. I remember the last one I watched in a hotel room near Atlanta, Georgia. I watched Tech pretty much beat up on Ole Miss, and I was shocked about that game. And I was shocked about the year before when we beat Mississippi State. So that we're actually talking about a program today that now has two bowl wins in a row. But what do you think is the worst case scenario? We're hearing a lot about 1991 this week. I'm sure the players are really tired of hearing about 1991 this week. But what do you think is the worst case scenario? What we go up to Wyoming? What do you think is the worst thing that could happen to us?
Great question, Taylor. And first off, I do just want to show everybody I am sporting my Texas Tech polo today. So I am representing.
I like it. I like it.
So if I'm thinking of worst case scenario, number one, I really think this team is going to be very good. I'm with you. I was in Nashville for the Ole Miss game, and I thought that if you had asked me what I thought before the game, I would have probably taken Ole Miss to beat us, and we beat them pretty handily. I like where this team is headed. It's the way that they finished the season a year ago gives me a lot of hope. They went 8-5, and I think they won 4 of their last 5. The wheels could have very easily come off. In the previous years, the last 2 coaches, it seemed like we really faded away, especially under Cliff. The team just collapsed every November. It was nice for once to see a team win 4 of the last 5. But you asked me what I think about this. I feel like I'm jumping around here, but I'll tell you this. I think worst case scenario, I see like a 38-16, 38-21 type score where they make it closer than it probably should be. Maybe we struggle out of the gate to get anything going offensively. But that to me is 38-21 would be probably the worst case scenario. And I think that's with us playing poorly, really on both sides of the ball. Maybe Shutt gets hurt, whatever. I know he's had a hard time staying healthy for a full season. Although I think this year will be different since it's his last season and he's ready to get paid going to the NFL. 38-21 would be my absolute, I think, worst case. And even with that score, Taylor, that 38-21, I think it's they probably get a couple of long sustained drives, chew up some clock, and we don't have a whole lot of time to. And even though 38 points is probably considered pretty good, 38-21 I think is worst case.
All right. Well, you're a little more optimistic than me, but I still think worse than a worst case scenario, we still win. I was reading about this coach, Bull, is I believe is his name. He comes from the same lineage as Chris Kleiman. And I do think they don't really do a lot to beat themselves. I don't think on offense they're ultra talented. I think that what would have to happen for like a really strange worst case scenario would be that we just choke the ball up with some crazy turnovers early. And then, we're in a position late in the game where we have to come back and win it. I just think the problem for Wyoming and any hope they have to win this game is they do have some talent on defense, but as Coach McGuire keeps mentioning, we have 9 offensive linemen who have played college football games, and I just think that depth's eventually gonna wear them down. So I would say the worst case scenario, absolute worst case scenario, and I'm telling you this would have to be a wild one, would be like 24-17 Tech.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So what do you think is the best case scenario? And then we'll talk about what we really think is going to happen.
Okay, so we do best case scenario. I think if we let's go back to the Ole Miss game. If we played like we did against Ole Miss, we will blow these fools out. I would say even as much as like 41, 44. I'll say 44-7 in a scenario.
Okay.
Because I looked at their stats from a year ago. Like you said, they're not ultra talented. I think they average 300 yards a game on offense, and that's with playing teams like San Jose State, Colorado State. I mean, these are not exactly powerhouse programs. And I'm thinking if you go 7-6 with 300 yards a game, I think it was like 180 rushing yards and like 120 pass yards. I just think that we're going to overwhelm them on defense. I don't think that there's anything that they can do that we aren't going to completely shut down. This isn't the Matt Wells, Cliff Kingsbury years. It's not.
not on defense, that's for sure. What was the score? Remind me real quick of your best case.
I'm going best case. I think we run them over 44-7. I do
44-7. Okay, I'm actually gonna go best case. Some of the same thinking that you're talking about. I was reading about their offensive line. They've got a good center, but it seems like their offensive line is a lot like ours was last year. They've got a lot of question marks. They don't necessarily have a ton of experience. I think they do have some decent running backs. The quarterback seems kind of like a type of quarterback that's more of a game manager. He may not make too many mistakes, but he's really not that talented. I could see a scenario where we just dominate the line of scrimmage on that side of the ball. I could see those pressure players getting pressure on them, and that's where things could get crazy if we start getting a lot of 3-and-outs, create some turnovers. But we have both. Was it Cameron Valdez and Taj Brooks? We get them rolling. Wyoming's not able to go into like one of those crazy 3-3-5 type defensive packages that slows down our passing game. And I just think at that point we'd have too many offensive weapons. And I actually think that best case scenario is a real possibility. I actually think there's a possibility, very real possibility that could happen. And I actually could see it even getting crazier. I don't know, saying 7 points. I'd say the best case scenario, in my opinion, would be like 66-10.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it would be everything would have to go right. We can't turn the ball over. They'd have to have 3 or 4 turnovers, a lot of 3-and-outs, and that everything would kind of have to go our way.
I certainly would take that, man. 66-10 would be yeah, quite the pounding.
Yeah, I might enjoy a cold adult beverage after a game of that kind. It's possible.
That makes two.
All right. So what do you think's actually going to happen?
Okay, so what I really think is going to happen, I'll go back and say I'm going to go 38-10 as the final score. I will, and I think that's with they'll score a field goal in the second quarter and tack on a touchdown with probably 7 or 8 minutes left after it's well out of hand. I'll say it'll be 31-10 at that point. We'll tack on one more late, but I'm going to go 38-10 and say we beat them by 4 touchdowns. I just don't think they can move the ball. That again, I go back to last year. I know they have 17 returning starters. I just don't think playing San Jose State, Colorado State is going to get you prepared for what we're going to hit them with.
I just think the tech depth is going to be too much for them. I do think the one player who has an excuse to be looking ahead a week ahead, probably the tech coaching staff doesn't agree with me, but I do think the one player who is looking past this game because he's a human being and we all are is, and I can't believe you pronounce his last name Shuck, right? It's not spelled anything like that, right? I do think Tyler Shuck there's no way that he is not looking to next week. That's his former team, former teammates. I could see some crazy stuff happening at the beginning of this game where maybe he throws like a tip ball or he's just a little bit off. They get a pick six, something like that. I think we could blow a coverage early because, again, it's a first game, things like that happen. So I could see them. I think what they're going to do is they're going to put up 14 point. Why I'm going to put 14 points on the board. I think despite all of that, even with some jitters, some chemistry being worked out on the offensive line with new players at new positions, it's the first time they're playing a live game like that. I still think we'll put 21 on the board against them. I think it'll be 21-14 going into halftime. I think Joey McGuire, he'll give one of his pep talks. His pep talk at Cedar Hill that was on YouTube years ago is one of the main reasons why I wanted him to be our head coach, and I think that'll pay dividends on Saturday night. I think the second half will be we'll just keep rolling, and I think we'll hold them to almost nothing. I think maybe they'll get a field goal. So I think it'll end up being 42-17.
Okay.
All right. So where do you think, I'm curious because I have a lot of thoughts on this. Where do you think this momentum started? This momentum that we've seen over what I think is a year and a half. Where do you think it why do you think it started? Who do you think the main people, who are the main people who are responsible for the momentum we've created in Lubbock over the last year and a half? I think it's unquestionable that we have created momentum. I'm just curious who you think, maybe a name or two you think's responsible for this.
Great question. I would probably say Cody Campbell and John Sellers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, those are good answers.
We throw in
Uh,
we throw in
Dusty Dusty
Dusty
Womble.
Womble as well.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
I think those three guys have been instrumental in getting Joey McGuire in. I remember when they first hired him, I wasn't 100% sure. I think I had him as like the third or fourth coach on my list. But obviously, those guys are way more connected and know a lot more about this than I do. I kind of wanted that guy from UTSA to come, and I think he would have been a great choice. But they knew something about McGuire, and they brought in the resources and helped make it happen. And then, I mean, just look at the recruiting. The recruiting has gone through the roof in the last year and a half.
Right.
Since Jordan McGuire got there, they're really bringing in some good quality kids. And I look at it in comparison to previous regimes, and this is the highest recruiting we've been putting together. Now I know it's only been a year and part of another season, so this has been the best since Leach. In fact, I think statistically this is better than Leach, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely better. I don't think Leach was talking. We were talking to too many 5-star recruits or we weren't landing too many 5-star recruits
Yeah.
under him. Definitely the donors you talked about. Thank you. For sure that's been a big help. I think Tech's really ahead. I don't understand all of it. Trying to learn more about it, but we're definitely ahead on the whole NIL game. You've seen a lot written about that. It's being talked about all over the Big 12 and even all over the country. To me, actually, the first person who's responsible for this, well, you could probably say Kirby Hocutt because he had the guts. I can't say on here what I really want to say, but he had the guts to walk into a coach's office who was 5-3 and fire him. And then he hired the Golden Boy, the West Texas local kid, as the interim head coach. We still had 4 games left to become bowl eligible. I think it's safe to say most of us thought all 4 of those teams were way more talented than we were, but he was able to get a win, and he was able to bring the whole pump jack mentality to the program. Something that we haven't had that kind of intensity in football games for, in my opinion, maybe early in maybe Cliff's first season, maybe. And it really in Tuberville, even though we were winning some games, it was just a weird time at Tech. I thought for Tech football, the Tuberville years. So I think Sonny Cumby deserves a lot of credit. That entire search committee deserves a lot of credit. They interviewed a lot of people, and they definitely found the right guy, and he's just sustained that momentum. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the entire season.
That's great, man. Great answer too. I think as you're asking that, I completely forgot about Kirby and then what Sonny Cumby had done as well. So great answer.
I mean, I mean, I watched a lot of. I remember watching a press conference up in Oklahoma State where they were talking to Coach Gundy, and he's like, I don't know what's going on with Kirby. Like, almost. I mean, I think they're friends from the Big 8 days, but I think he thought. I think a lot of people in the conference thought he was. He really was going out on a limb, firing a coach that had a 5-3 record that season. But they forget the previous 2 years, which were terrible. But I think it took a lot of courage for Kirby to admit that he was wrong on like his guy. And one of the polls I've run on old school Texas Tech, I think any U.S. president from either party would love to have his approval rating. It's pretty high. I think it was like 94, 95%. So he's popular amongst our fan base for sure.
Count me among that 94 to 95%.
Yeah. I was actually when I heard the name I didn't know what we were getting when I heard the name Brett Yormark. I was like, well, who is this guy? Didn't realize he was going to be a superstar too. But my first reaction was, oh, thank you that they did not hire Kirby Hocutt because he was my understanding is he was a candidate for that position. So I'm glad that we were able to keep him, and I think he just signed a new contract recently. So hopefully he's there for years to come. All right, you have anything else to add on this game?
No, I just think it's going to be a nice. It wouldn't surprise me though if we did struggle out of the gate, knowing who's coming to town next weekend. It's just like you
Yeah,
said,
it's human nature, you know.
I wouldn't be surprised too if we just completely ran these guys over as well. So I think either one of those things could happen. If you look back in the totality of Tech football, there's been some openers where we've blown some people out and some where we've not been quite as good. So it could go either way. But I am
Yeah,
expecting a comfortable win.
I think this weekend is about the history of two losses, in my opinion. I wrote it's going to be in the article that I'm going to post. It's the game in 1991. None of these guys, to my knowledge, I don't think that's possible. I don't know. I know we've got a lot of new red shirt laws, rules, and stuff, but I don't think any of these guys were alive in 1991 that are playing. But I'm sure they're hearing a lot about that. We were 17-point favorites to win that game under Spike Dykes, and they beat us up 22-17, I think, something like that. So I think that game kind of hangs over their head just because I'm sure knowing Joey McGuire, he's talking about it all the time. Just make sure they're not overlooking them. The other game is that loss to K-State, which triggered the change back in 2021, triggered making Sonny Cumbie the interim head coach, and then eventually that momentum continuing with Joey McGuire. So I think those two games are kind of the games that I think about most going into this one. I think it will be a win, and it's going to set up a very interesting week next week.
Perfect.
All right, we'll talk soon. All the best.
Thanks, bud. I enjoyed it.